I wanted to be a doctor, and before I was drafted, I was in school and I was taking pre-med courses. So I did miles, but then I got lazy and my grades dropped. That's why I got drafted. And me with my crazy self, all I had to do was just get my lesson in college, and I probably would have been deferred. But really, what happened to me, I qualified for a military academy. I was going on to go to the academy 4 years and then go on to flight school. And I didn't get that. I had one misdemeanor on my record, and that was parading without a permit. I walked out of 16th Street Baptist Church with a sign, walked down to the sidewalk and made a left turn right into the police officer's hands. And I was only 15 years old, and that kept me from getting into the academy. So I started chasing girls and didn't get no lesson. Uncle Sam said, "Well, we got a job for you to do, fella. So just come on with us." We landed in Vietnam, I think, on the first of December of 1967. I know the younger fellows were, my age was afraid. See, because the fellows ahead of us were getting killed. And they just said, "Oh Lord, I don't." Well, when we first got over there, we were patrolling, and the war seemed like just a regular game because we were not making contact. We would stay out 2 and 3 weeks at a time, and we were complaining because we hadn't made contact. And we were wondering if there were any people out there to fight. One night, that's when all hell broke loose, and fire was coming from everywhere. That was our first firefight. We lost 2 men that night. And we learned something that night. We learned that at that time you could die over there. When you see your friends laying down on the ground dead and you can't do anything about it, it works on your mind. One fellow named Sergeant Sane, one of the nicest people you'll ever want to meet. And every time I think about him, I sort of tear up a little bit. We were on patrol one night, and he was a machine gunner. And we received incoming, and they shot a B-40 rocket in on him because he was a machine gunner. And I went over to try to help him, and when I raised him up, his whole head was gone. Now that got to me. And I went over and told the company commander that Sane was dead. He said, "How do you know he's dead?" I said, "Sir, his head is gone." And he gave me a direct order, said, "You get back over there and you find him a head and you bring him back to life." And I stayed awake all that night trying to figure out where I could get a head from and not kill nobody else. That's in a situation like that, you almost go crazy. And when you see stuff like that from the people that you began training with, and you stay with them, and then all of a sudden they're gone, you begin to wonder why it was them instead of you. I put myself in a zone, and just like I said before, these people were really willing to give their life for me, so I just was willing to give my life for them. You become unafraid. By that time, I had seen so much death until I was beginning to wonder, was I dead and everybody else was alive? Several times I was wounded, but my wounds at that time were not severe enough for me to leave the field. I could have, but I didn't want to, because the men that I was in Vietnam with were the men that I had trained with from basic, and we had become close. We were like family, and I didn't want to leave them fellas out there. They depended on me to take care of them, and I depended on them to take care of me. I think it was here 1487. We were patrolling. I saw the fellas. I had some behind me and some in front of me. They all jumped, and I was wondering what was they jumping for. and all of a sudden I heard boom. I remember going through the air, but I landed on my feet. And I looked around to see was anybody else hit, cause I said, well, ain't nobody hit, but everybody was looking at me. I said, okay, well, if everybody, I said, so nobody's hit, so we'll move on. Well, when I took a step, this leg fell off from under me. I said, oh my God, I'm hit. A medic was only supposed to be on line for 6 months. He's on 6 and off 6. But we were losing so many men, so I had to stay on line 9 months. The day before, I was supposed to come off line and go back and work in the battalion aid station on the 30th of July, and I got wounded on the 29th. That's just how my luck was running. I said, boy. They medevaced me to Da Nang. That's where they operated on me, and they couldn't get all of the metal out there. I still have metal in both legs. And then I stayed there for about a month, and then they sent me down to Cameron Bay to convalesce and until I was able to walk again. And then from there, I went back to the aid station and stayed there for a few weeks. And by that time, it was time for my rotation. So that's when I came home. I was very different when I came back. I was afraid to be around people. Didn't want to go anywhere. And by God, I know I took my wife through hell. And I think, well, see, she and I grew up in the same community. And I think that's the reason she stuck with me, because she really loved me, and I appreciate that. Because I know I was a tough cookie when I got back. I don't see how I stood myself. What really made me really seek help was, I got married and had kids. I would talk to them, and they said my voice was so harsh that they were afraid of me. And I told them, I don't want you to be afraid of me. I'm your father. I love you. I'll die for you. And I had to realize that my inflection was affecting them. So I took a speech class. And then my speech therapist would have me talking to a tape recorder. And then I could hear myself. And I could see what they were talking about. So I began to really control my tone of voice. My saving grace was singing. I was able to put myself into my singing, and sometimes singing became an out-of-body experience for me. And that really consoled me. But, if I had not had that, and a family that stuck in there, hung in there with me, I probably would have ended up on drugs or on alcohol. So, But I finished college after I came from, after I ETS from service. Then I went on to grad school, but I didn't want to be a doctor anymore, because after what I had seen in Vietnam, I wanted to know. The pressure of having somebody's life in my hand was too great. I couldn't deal with that anymore. Being a medic in the field, you had to play triage, you had to play doctor, you had to play nurse, you had to play the whole gamut. And the pressure was just, I functioned, but the pressure was just too great for me to live that after I got out of the service. So I changed fields altogether. But it's, Vietnam's still with me. They asked me, did I want to go back over there? No. As a matter of fact, I was in Guam 2014, and it smelled just like Vietnam, and that was too close for me. I said, I even hate that smell.